Maria, welcome to Dying to Live. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Kristen. It's a pleasure. It's always wonderful talking to you. So I'm looking forward to having a rich conversation.
Me too. I'm very, very excited to share space with you and to introduce this audience to you if they don't already know you and what you're about.
Oh, wonderful.
So I thought I would start with just a little bit of a story, a personal story about you. And you've heard this, so you'll have to bear with it, but they have not. And I want to just give a little insight as to kind of the first time that I came to know you. I was, I must have been 26 or 27. I had just moved to Seattle from Michigan, where I had lived all my life. I had a job with a company that was sponsoring the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen. And that was the year when you were honored as one of the 10 new best chefs. And I was terribly unhappy at this job and kind of wondering, like, what am I going to do? Are all of these life decisions that I've made, in vain? Should I have made different decisions? And then as I got to kind of watch you in this process, I saw you up there with these 9 other people being honored. And I was just so stoked that this badass female chef was up there being honored. And it gave me like the encouragement to keep going, because I truly saw you and thought, okay, she's up there doing her thing. I can do my thing. This is just a moment. This isn't life. I can do this. And so I want to honor you for that. And it was just really special. And that makes it even more special that we're talking now.
Oh my goodness, you have not shared that story with me. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh,
I thought
it was great. It was a moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I thought for sure I did. Okay. Well, yes. Well, yeah. And so then, we met recently then through a mutual friend, and I was so stoked to get the introduction and to get to know you a little bit, and even more stoked to have the opportunity to kind of talk about ways that you're evolving in your career and how you want to kind of exist in the world professionally, that really coincides with some of the things I'm doing as well on a number of levels. And so I was hoping today you might just talk about kind of your, I guess, personal evolution lately, COVID related, and then kind of in general, like those times in your life when you had to kind of stop the record and say, I need to be doing a different thing. I need to make another decision. This isn't serving me anymore. And kind of just how that transpires for you.
Yeah. It's been a crazy 2020. And I think I've learned so much. There's a lot of tough lessons to go through. As you know, I had to close down Tilth restaurant, which I owned for 14 and a half years. And that restaurant was it was my honing device, Kristen. It was kind of that guiding force. And I felt like the restaurant really kept me grounded. It kept me in touch with my mission and those core values that are really important to me, as far as organics and mentorship and leadership and being a part of the community and serving the community and creating experiences for people where they feel cared for and nurtured, and they have a wonderful time, and they have the ability to connect with whoever they're dining with that evening. And it's also been, where I've received a lot of accolades professionally, and it's put me on the map on a national scale. And all of that was my, in a lot of ways, professionally, was my everything. And so, COVID hit, and everyone was doing the, art of the pivot, and, no one can be in your restaurant anymore, but you're still trying to figure out how to make it work out. No one knows how long this is going to happen. So enters this opportunity for working with the unknown. Every single day, you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what's going to happen the next week. You don't know what's going to happen the next month. You don't know if you're going to be able to open or close your establishment. So it was a really, really stressful time. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of insecurity. There's a lot of second guessing myself. Am I doing the right thing? And through that entire process, the one thing, like, my team kept me going. So that was a big, huge help. I had a really incredible, there was only, down at the end, there was only 3 of us running the restaurant for 7 days a week. And it was a really nice, tight core team. And some of the beautiful things that had come out of that process is I have never experienced that sort of unconditional loyalty in a work setting in my life. And you can only experience it when you're tested to that level. It's the only time that you can experience that. So I think that was one of the most beautiful things that I felt so grateful for. And then, the hope, like, every single day, it's like you kind of think about what's the next thing you can do. How can you stay optimistic? Like, what's the next pivot? What can we do? We're here for the community. And that really, keeps things lit for you. And it just, you just keep moving towards the light as much as you can. And I think I had kind of made the decision that I want to continue and move forward, whether the restaurant makes it or not. It's important to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and making sure that every decision that I made with the right intention, whatever it was, whether it was financial decision, whether it was the next pivot thing we were going to do, whatever it was, however I was feeling emotionally, it was just really important that I just did everything with the best intention, because whatever the outcome is, I couldn't control the outcome, Kristen. There is no controlling the outcome in life in general. So that's the one thing that you can really count on is, are you handling everything the best way that you can? And are you moving through this lifetime with the most intention you possibly can? And so that's what kind of kept me going. And then yeah. And then the restaurant closed, and it was like, okay, now the restaurant's closed, and it had this finality to it. And, at that point, I really struggled because I had so much of my identity attached to the restaurant. I didn't have next steps lined up. I've been working for myself for, 15 years now. So I didn't have anything lined up. And it takes everything out of you to run an operation, during a time like COVID. Businesses are actually harder to run when it's slow. When business is good and when it's busy, they're quite easy to run. You have your systems in place, you have your structures, you have your team, and everything just kind of hums along. But when it slows down or when it's in crisis mode, that's when it's, definitely the most difficult to kind of, to see your way through. So kind of circling back, restaurant closed, didn't have anything lined up, wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And I just figured, I'm exhausted. I have anxiety like I've never had before, not sleeping well, adrenal fatigue, full on burnout. So I was like, I'm just going to rest. I'm just going to let my system rest. And I had decided that I was just going to trust in myself and trust that the right thing would happen at the right time. And everything that I've ever done has been a very organic process. I've never been, super strategic. Like I'm a very goal-oriented person, but I have these goals and I just move, I just get on the path towards that goal, but I don't necessarily say, okay, I need this marker to happen, this marker to happen, this marker to happen. It's just, you have that goal, you walk the path, you stay open, you be as flexible and nimble as you can, you trust in yourself, you trust in those around you. And I feel like you do end up getting to that, to meet that goal, whatever it is. So this was the first time, Kristen, that I was goalless. So that was unsettling for me because I didn't have a goal on like, this is my goal, this is my path. I didn't have a path, you know? So I was like, okay, this is like, you need to rest in the stillness right now and it'll come to you, and just trust that it'll come to you. And then things started to slowly happen and evolve, and they're happening quite quickly. I feel like the more you open yourself up, the quicker things come, because you're not closing yourself off to opportunity. You're not closing yourself off to relationships. You're not closing yourself off to trying something new or things that scare you. And you just go with it in the moment. And it's kind of working out.
Oh my goodness. I feel the anxiety in all of that. And I also feel the beauty in it, like the opportunity for working with the unknown. You know, many of us, I guess it comes from kind of a privileged place. Many of us don't actually have to do that a lot, right? Life hums along, things keep working, and that's great. But then when we have the opportunity to slow down, when a crisis comes, that's when we're really asked to kind of step out of the comfort zone of the everyday as it always occurs and trust in the unknown. And we're not like really taught how to do that in this culture. So, gosh, all of your practices about, rest and existing in the stillness and seeing what comes, that's so much harder than continuing to grind it out and to put goals on paper just to have them there, even though if you don't know what you want to do, and just to kind of be. And so I want to give you so much kudos for the rest and the stillness. And I've seen some things evolve from you, and I'm sure there's so much more going on that I don't know. And I've experienced for myself as well that really works. Like sometimes my favorite question to ask, say the universe for guidance is, what do I need to know today? What do I need to know right now? Not like, what should my next 10 goals be? Where am I going to be in 5 years? More general, like waiting for the guidance to come about where I need to be next. But it's hard.
It's hard, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful practice, that having that restraint keeps you more in the present moment, doesn't it?
It does. And for me at least, and I'm really curious to hear for you, when I'm able to exist in the present moment, really exist in it, the fear and the anxiety dissipates. But it's the continual coming back to that present moment that's the hard thing. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that, or, what works for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I made a couple of notes on that because, we were talking about it earlier, and you were like, this is one of the questions that I would be curious about. And so I spent a little time thinking about that, because I'm an anxious individual. I think if you're a hard charging kind of like type AAA personality, like the anxiety is kind of a part of that process. If you're, if you are constantly on the go, and I definitely am, like, I want to live the full breadth of life. And when I get excited about something, I get excited about it, and I want to go just all in, and I want to go all in on everything because I'm so passionate and excited about everything. But when you move through the world at that pace, there is this anxiety that is kind of nipping at your heels quite often. And when things start to kind of get off track, it really, then the anxiety kind of creeps up even more. So, over the past 20 years, like things that I've found that have helped is I study Tibetan Buddhism. And so really learning to try and like steady my mind, which is a constant work in progress. That's been really helpful, just having some sort of guiding philosophy, and working on my sleep hygiene, getting enough rest, that definitely helps quite a bit. And what I've noticed over the past couple of years, as I've delved into the nutrition aspect of food and food being medicine, how eating the right sorts of food for your body can also help reduce a lot of that, mental anxiety or depression or, whatever that may be. So changing my diet, that's made a really big difference as well. And exercising, I've always been huge into exercising, but I find the more intense the activity when I exercise, the less time my mind spends ruminating and the more time I'm in the present moment. And I also think just that action of all that oxygen coming up into your brain and that kind of flushing out of your system and all that blood flow that you're getting, I think a lot of that really helps just calm the system down a little bit. And then here recently in the past year, when, things have been really rough and I suffer from seasonal affective disorder, and psilocybin has been really helpful for my anxiety, and it's been really helpful for the seasonal depression, because sometimes, you just need a little extra help. Like you can't, at least for me, I can't always do it on my own. Like I watch what I eat, I exercise, I meditate, I study Buddhism, and I try and do all of the right, have the right tools in my toolkit. But the microdosing, I have noticed that there is a significant impact on the anxiety and depression factor, and it just sharpens up my focus and it alleviates the brain fog, and it really like stops that rumination wheel from just churning and churning. And then I make a little note on my to-do list, Kristen. I put a little, what is it right now? I had to change it up all the time. If it's always the same one, then it just starts to become a part of the to-do list. My eyes glaze over on it. So right now it's thought bubble. So whenever I see that it says thought bubble, that's a reminder to me that if my mind is ruminating or I start thinking too much about the future or too much about the past, to just envision a bubble and the bubble just kind of dissipating and not even attaching a word to it. Because if I attach a word to it, very often there's a judgment that comes along with that word. So for me, if I use imagery, a lot of times that helps just kind of break that. So I try and do these little mini, these like little micro mindfulness moments throughout my day. So I don't continue having those deep grooves of rumination that happen in the thinking ahead and thinking into the future. So if I can break that up enough and create these little spurs, like if you think of a deep valley and a river running through it, those little micro mini breaks, those are my little spurs that take me off to like a little creek here and there. And it gets me off that big force of water that's just going through the valley and, in that rumination future mode is kind of how I think about it in my head.
Oh, wow. I love visualizations as well. And I love the thought bubble dissipating one. I haven't done that one. Sometimes I'll think of whatever it is from future or past or whatever thought keeps me in a circle. Sometimes I'll picture it and I'll picture a cord going from myself to the thought. And then I'll picture pulling the cord out from both ends and watching it kind of dissolve back into the ether. And usually that has a great calming effect for me. But yeah, visualizations are great. And I want to circle back to something you said too about food. Like, let's talk about food, and then let's talk about microdosing. So on the food front, you have a published cookbook, and it is kind of at the intersection, if you will, of the idea of movement and exercise, performance, as well as nutrition, and really fueling yourself for whatever it is that you want to do in the like adventure landscape. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I love the storytelling and the people that you have involved in this book, and the way that people talk about the benefits of food and how it does, they integrate it to amplify their health.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the idea for the book, Peak Nutrition, came about when I went on a bouldering trip out to Leavenworth with my buddy Mercedes Pollmeier, and she has done some coaching with me to get me ready for some El Capitan ascents and just get my body tuned up, or, you know, going to France to go sport climb for a few months to help me get tuned up for these trips. So when I go out there, I have basically more access, and I'm recovering well, and I have enough energy to do all of the things that I want to do when I go on an adventure, as well as like keeping safe, right? Because if you're healthy and you're mentally, you know, you continue to have your mental acuity, that keeps you safe when you're in these environments that are, you know, your life is on the line, quite literally on a line of rope. So her and I, you know, we went on this bouldering trip, and I was asking her all these different questions about, you know, training, nutrition, this and that. And she had all these incredible answers, and she has a master's in human movement as well. And so I told her, I was like, you know, there is not a sports nutrition cookbook that exists for the mountain athlete. There's some sports nutrition cookbooks, but they don't deal with the sort of adversity that we go through when we're in the mountains. Very often, you know, I won't have access to refrigeration or a stove for 4 nights. So how can I fuel myself when I'm on a big wall in that scenario? Or when you go backpacking and, you know, you're off doing the PCT for, you know, for days at a time. Like, how do you kind of fuel yourself for those things? And Kristen, I'm 48 years old. Okay. So I'm not a spring chicken, you know, like I am not made of elasticity anymore. My recovery, I don't just like bounce back the next day after like grinding it out in the mountains. Like, this body needs a little extra time recovering, and I need all the little tricks and tips that I can so I can perform at the level of a, you know, 20-year-old, which is how I want to be performing when I'm, you know, out rock climbing. And I found that nutrition is that path for me. So I, you know, had done a couple of big wall trips where I was just eating, you know, like a bunch of energy bars that, you know, I had purchased that are basically loaded with sugar. You're basically eating candy bars. And then there's like hardly any fiber in it. So you're bonking because your glycemic, you know, index, you're completely spiking your blood sugar. And when your blood sugar spikes up that quickly, then it crashes, you know, even worse. So then you're bonking. And then I didn't know enough about like good hydration electrolytes. So then I was like fully dehydrating my body. And then, you know, of course, then I'm having bourbon on the portaledge at night to, you know, kind of calm the nerves and the mind a little bit. So enter more, you know, dehydration, and then you're not sleeping good. And you're getting all this inflammation, and, you know, you're starting to get brain fog. And then you got to get on the sharp end, and then you got to get up and climb, and it's your pitch to lead. And you're leading on these little tiny hooks and on these little rivet hangers. And you don't know where that next place of protection is actually going to be. So you have to be very focused. And the fact that pretty much everything that you do is life-threatening. If a rock comes down and falls and hits you on the head, or cuts the rope, or, if you're, didn't tie your knot properly, if you didn't place your protection properly, there's a danger element. So really being able to stay focused in those moments and having the physical energy to get through it is of the utmost importance. So that kind of led me down the nutrition path. And then at one point I was training to climb the nose. I had 3 restaurants and I was consulting for Microsoft. And oddly enough, I came down with full-on burnout. And burnout a lot of times can look like adrenal fatigue, which means your cortisol level is going right through the roof. So you're up in the middle of the night for a few hours and you're wide awake. And then in the morning, you have complete brain fog and your energy level is just never really there. And it is a really difficult space to be in. I became very emotional. I became very frustrated because I wasn't able to go with the capacity I usually can. I wasn't able to keep up with my, exercise routine and just mentally, I wasn't staying really sharp. And so I studied different types of diets for adrenal fatigue to get my body back on track. And I was going off of this adrenal fatigue diet book by Dr. Alan Christensen. And I followed his protocol for 30 days. And within 30 days, I had 85% of my energy level back simply through nutrition. I didn't have to take a magic pill. I didn't have to go to big pharma, none of that. It was simply through what I was putting in my body. And that was the next realization. The first realization was increasing my performance outdoors through nutrition. And then that second realization was how you can keep your mental capacity on track with what you're putting in your body and your emotional state, with what you're putting in your body with nutrition. So then we produced this book, and the book kind of covers all of that.
And what I love most about this book is that it is incredibly approachable. So let's say I'm not someone that's ever going to go sleep on a portaledge. I would like to go with you actually. But let's say,
let's do it.
Let's say for some of the folks listening, it makes all of these ideas very, very accessible. And also I think really important to point out, you are epically, of course, as a chef, focused not only on the nutritional aspects, but that it has to be really tasty and enjoyable. We shouldn't have to sacrifice the pleasure of food, which is one of the greatest pleasures in life, for some of these other health benefits. And the way that you weave the storytelling through it and everything, I think it's just something that everyone can benefit from.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And you really hit it there with the food should be pleasure. It absolutely should be pleasurable. There's no reason for it not to. And, sometimes it's just knowing what kind of ingredients to work with or having those cooking tips or understanding how to put different ingredients together that can make something that's really healthy and nutritionally dense taste really incredible and have that pleasure of eating. Because you're right, eating is we have an emotional bond to it. We have a sensuous bond to it, just all those different textures and flavors. It's a very sensory oriented experience. And for me, that's the most important thing with food always. That's always been the very first thing that comes to mind when I'm putting ingredients and stuff together. And then of course the organics and then the nutrition, but it has to be delicious. It has to be pleasurable.
And then kudos too you did get to a point where you had to listen to your body, but listening to your body and understanding what was going on with it. And then, feeling your way through resourcing yourself around how you could help yourself heal. And again, taking the time to rest, taking the time to put nutrition in your body that was going to be helpful. I think that's something that would be really easy for a lot of us to sidestep in a really busy life. But to understand that with all of those things going on, you were able to do that for yourself is really helpful for people.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Right now I'm doing this, I put together this 30-day wellness challenge on my Instagram feed, just to focus on that, just to let people know that, even when times are shitty, when you're having a hard time and, you're basically homeschooling your kids and you're trying to get your work done at the same time, and you have to keep up with, everything that needs to happen, like just to keep up your house, all of those different things that you have going on, like it's really hard for us to find time for ourselves and care for ourselves. And I really wanted to do something to encourage and show different ways that people could take 5 minutes a day to care for themselves. And it doesn't seem like a big block of time, but even taking that 5 minutes a day to have a gratitude practice, taking 5 minutes to just get on a yoga mat and stretch, or, if you simultaneously, if you need to like do your yoga stretches while you're making coffee, like just different little tricks and tips that, that people can use to really encourage them and let them know that it's just so important to care for yourself and to create as much wellness as you can. Because if you are feeling well and you feel like you're on track, then it allows you to have the capacity to better care for others and have more mindfulness. And, a lot of times when we get busy, we get anxious and we have a lot of things going on, things just fly out of our mouths without us thinking about it. We become very reactionary in how we move through the world. And just taking 5 minutes here and there to just slow that down makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, common theme here in this discussion is slowing down and taking
yes.
pause. Yeah. Okay, so then circling back to the idea of psilocybin and the use of psychedelics from a microdosing perspective. Any listener to this podcast will know that it's something that I feel very passionate about as well, for depression, for anxiety, for PTSD, for general kind of brain and emotional health, in the way that that the psilocybin works with our brain and kind of rewires it and shores up things that need shored up without us even having to really interact with it. Because when you're microdosing, you typically don't feel anything. It just does the work, and then you reap the benefits and feel the outcome later after you're done with, a regimen of it, where you might feel more clear, you might feel more balanced, you might feel more grounded. And I think it's really beautiful when we can interact with our plant friends in that way. And I think you've done some work to help legalize that, so that it is something and a resource that's available to more people that might benefit from it.
Yeah, working on it. Definitely working on getting it decriminalized. And yeah, Kristen, everything that you're talking about, that's what I have experienced when I have microdosed, is definitely having that clarity. And I've been on 3 different types of antidepressants, and they didn't work at all, Kristen. They didn't work. They're addictive, and that's why you had to taper off of them. Mm-hmm. So when you get on them for a while, you have to taper off because it's addictive. And if you don't, you kind of spiral out of control. Like I have been on Lexapro, Trazodone, and Prozac, and they just dampen you. So yes, I don't feel as anxious, but I also don't feel as passionate, or I don't feel as motivated either. It's just like this dampening effect. And it doesn't it doesn't give space for me to be able to like actually work with my mind and figure out what the problem is and resolve it. And what I have found is with the psilocybin is that it reduces that anxiety and it works with your serotonin. So it doesn't increase your serotonin, but it works with your serotonin. So you feel like you have more of it available to you. And it also slows down the default mode network in your brain, so that the part that really does the ruminating in your prefrontal cortex, it starts to slow that down. So there's the shift that happens in your brain when you're using psilocybin. And it's within that shift that it creates space. The plant medicines, they create the space that allows you to do your work with your problems in a way that feels comfortable, without the fear, without the high anxiety. And you can kind of look at it like, okay, like there's a shit pile right there and I got to work with it. How am I going to figure out how to work through this shit pile? And you can think about it more pragmatically and you're like, okay, let's figure it out. How are we going to move this? All right, let's get a shovel and probably a bucket. We'll get a shovel and a bucket. Cool, let's do that. And then you do it and the shit pile goes away and you're like, sweet. And then you move on to the next thing. And I find without the psilocybin on the antidepressants, you're just kind of just sitting in the shit pile, you know, like, you know, it's not really getting fixed. You're not resolving anything, but you're learning to be just kind of comfortable, just sitting in the shit pile. It's like, is that how we want to move through the world? You know?
No, it's not. It's not how we want to move through the world. At least it's not how I want to. I don't want to sit in that pile.
Oh no. Yeah. We there's no need for us to accept any sort of mediocrity. You know, we deserve more. And there are these beautiful sacred plant medicines that show us that. And they give the space for you to do it. They're wonderful teachers, wonderful teachers. And so right now in Seattle, I'm working with an organization called Decriminalize Nature Seattle. And what we're working on is trying to get an ordinance to go to get passed through with City Council in order for it to be decriminalized. So, you know, it allows for more access for people to, you know, be able to relieve their suffering with the medicine. You know, and at some point, legalization, that will be kind of a next step. But at least with the decriminalizing, the beauty of it is it allows all walks of life and, you know, all communities to be able to use it. If there are certain religious groups that they have been using, you know, sacred plant medicines for generations and generations, and right now they're not allowed to use those, and that's been taken from them. And then if you think about, you know, marginalized communities, if it goes directly into the hands of big pharma, what happens if you have crappy insurance? What happens if, you know, it's not something that is even accepted by insurance? Like they'll lose the accessibility if that happens. So if it's decriminalized, you know, that leaves room for people to go and forage for their medicine, to, you know, maybe grow their medicine. And so that's really important, because what a lot of us don't want to see happen to this movement is it becomes something that's for the privileged, and only privileged people have access to medicine. I think that the goal is to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we create a different medical model with this. I think that's the dream anyways.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you for the work that you are doing to make a lot of things accessible, this being one of them. Also, the wellness benefits of nutrition, the pleasure of food, and kind of, you know, accessibility of adventure and the way that you do it overall. it's really beautiful to see you do this work, and I'm excited for people to get to know more about you. So do you mind, before we say goodbye, tell people where they can find you? Instagram, website, wherever it is you want to direct them.
Sure, sure. Instagram at Chef Maria Hines, or my website, chefmariahines.com. And then my book is Peak Nutrition. And those are all the best ways to find me.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Absolutely, Kristen. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. We'll talk again for sure.